All right, hey, welcome to our week 2 of our course, and this week is all about understanding demand. Now, I've got a section of the chapter or section of a book I've written that's actually into this week. It's called Understanding Demand. You've got that online, but I wanted to provide a little bit of a 10-minute summary of notes. So let's take a look at this concept of demand. All right, today we're going to be talking about demand, and so I wanted to go over some notes just to help you get along or get started in the topic. Now, demand is really basically defining things that we want. Maybe even defines what we need, but demand is this concept. We want these things, or we need them, and the problem is there's a cost associated. So demand is really a balance of what we want, or maybe what we need, and then how much it might cost. So really those are kind of the factors. So one is what I want, and two is what it might cost me. And that really helps define demand. Now, it's more complicated, of course, but these two factors of demand, this idea of what it's going to cost us and what we want, really are the ways that we can start to begin to talk about, again, the concept of demand. Of course, it's more complicated, again, but this is a great way for us to look at this core concept. Now, after we break up what it costs or what we want, we really ought to start talking about what we want first. So let's talk about that. And the way we talk about that in ag economics is called an indifference curve, how indifferent you are to products. And that's the first way we can start looking at that. How indifferent we are really means simply a choice. So when you buy products, you have to choose. And you choose one over another, or you have combinations in reality. None of us just buy one thing. We actually have combinations. And so a simple way to look at this is let's just look at two choices. So two choices, and let's just do something like we're going to have a barbecue. So in this barbecue, we are going to have beef or we're going to have chicken, and we feel like that's the best menu. Of course, you probably would have a lot more, but again, this is our simple example. And so when I go to the store, I'm going to be looking at buying so much beef or so much chicken. And my choices are going to be things like buying very little beef, and so therefore I'm probably going to buy a whole lot more chicken to feed everybody. And I might go another way. I might say, I just really want some more beef. So then I probably would buy less chicken. So again, keeping it simple. More beef means less chicken. And so if I keep choosing more of one product, I end up choosing less of another. And that's because I'm trying to maintain some level of satisfaction. So when you go and plan out an event, you're going to end up having to choose between products. And without really thinking about it, you are balancing how you would make these choices. In other words, what's the best deal I have? A lot of choices will go, a lot of these factors go into that choice, but that is the basic idea. And so really it's easy to illustrate this on a graph. I've already given you some numbers, but let's throw out a graph. And so I've got a simple beef set of product on one line and chicken on another. And so if you have a situation where you buy, of course, a whole lot less, let's just say chicken, you would buy a whole lot more beef. And so there's a point in that relationship somewhere there. If you switched it and said, well, I have another way I'd go about this, I'd buy a lot of chicken and very little beef, then you would have those choices. Now, you may say to yourself, why not just buy all beef or no chicken? Well, that's really not realistic. Realistic is people make choices in combinations of product, and that's just my example. Well, when people make these choices, you end up with a line. I'm kind of trying to make a thick line here, see if I can do a better job of drawing it. But basically, we end up with choices where we have an indifference to buy more of one product or swap and buy more of the other product, trying to maintain a level of satisfaction. And I'm going to call this indifference curve 1, I1. Now, of course, I might want more. And so indifference curve 1 is kind of just one level. What if I wanted to buy a whole lot more of both those products? Then you would have another curve like I2 or another curve like I3. So the further you get away from the origin, the further you go out, really is showing more quantity, which that is more satisfaction. So if I were to walk up and say, man, I'm ready to have a barbecue, chicken or beef, I don't have a combination, so we've already settled on that. My combinations aren't going to be straight lines. In other words, these lines are not just 1 pound for another pound. Like 1 pound of beef does not really equal 1 pound of chicken. They cook differently. It's a different product. So you don't really swap them. So they're not straight lines. They're curved lines. We swap these products but not equally. That's the idea. So the first thing to notice about indifference curves, they're not straight lines. Also, along the indifference curve, we have different points. And so indifference curve 1 is got some different alternatives in 2 and 3. You may stop and say, well, why not just go all the way to 3? That's the best one. It gives me more product. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit. Money goes into effect there. But let's just stay on I1. You've got lots of choices. So we could buy a whole lot more chicken, which would be kind of a little spot there on the line. Or you could buy less chicken and more beef. You could swap all along, and you would have the same level of satisfaction. So let's do an example here. That'd be easier for me just to draw it. So point A or point B or point C or point D, those are all points all along that I1 line, and they really are just different quantities. What you would say is the consumers are just as satisfied. They're just swapping product for another product. So whenever you see someone buy more of your product, that doesn't always mean they're happier or more satisfied. They're just swapping. Now, you can see there's a different line, though. F, way out there on that I3 curve, that's definitely more satisfied. So that's something that we would want to try to identify. So if people are buying more of your product, if they're swapping it for other products, less of other products and more of yours, they're really not more satisfied. They just happen to be exchanging the product differently. All right, so let's talk now, if you're selling product, that your budget is kind of an important part. What about the money? Well, the money is what limits us. That previous graph, I1 was the lowest level. I3 would be great, but we probably can't afford that amount of quantity way out there. So how do you look at that? Well, if you've got beef and then you've got chicken, back to our same barbecue, and let's just say that beef costs $3 a pound, and chicken, the product that we buy, is, let's just say $2 a pound, and we've got a budget of, let's just say, I think $60 to spend. So $60 is our budget. So the question is, what could you buy? Well, if you bought all beef at $3 a pound, you could buy up to 20 pounds of that product. What if you just went with chicken? Well, chicken at $2 a pound means you could get up to 30 pounds of chicken. So it might make you slightly want to have more chicken than beef based on pounds. That's up to you, but those are all combinations along I1. So let's draw not the difference anymore. Let's draw the budget. What does that look like? So if you draw a budget line, you end up with the two products again, chicken and beef. And this line's pretty easy. Money swaps even. If you have an extra $1 and you have a product that costs $1, then you can buy one more unit of that. If you have $2 more and they cost $1 again, now you can buy 2 more units. So these are straight lines. So let's go and look at chicken. So chicken, you can buy 20 pounds of chicken. Or if you just bought all beef, so you kind of go out to the, wrong answer, 30 pounds of chicken, there it is. And if you just bought all beef, you could push that out to 20 pounds. Of course, not far from the origin as the other one. Well, if you connect those two lines, or 2 points, that's a straight line, that is your budget line. And all along that budget line, in each of those points, you're swapping product, but you're spending the same amount of money. So it is a straight line, not curved. All right, so that's kind of the 2 parts. One is about satisfaction and swapping product to be satisfied, and they're not linear. They have a substitution rate, and then budget is the amount of money. Well, if we can put these 2 things together, we start to understand how consumers might demand product. People have so much money, and then they also have a certain combination of satisfaction. And so as a person selling product, we really want to try to understand budget and satisfaction. And again, 2 separate pieces, but they can actually be plugged together so that we can look at the effect of how it works. All right, let's take a look at an example here I've got. So let me rewrite satisfaction. There we go, that's a little better. All right, so you've got a budget, and you've got chicken, and then you've got beef that you buy. And then we've already drawn how you kind of have so much beef, so much chicken, straight line. That's how much money I've got to spend. And then you got this idea of satisfaction, where I have different alternatives of indifference curves where I combine my beef and chicken choices. Well, if I put those right on top of each other, if I connect satisfaction and budget together and put them on one graph, then I end up with an indifference curve that hopefully will touch the budget somewhere. It has to. And so I1, I2, I3, I4, those are my potential choices of what I might want. I'd love to get all the way out to I4. What's your problem? I only have enough money. The budget I drew back there actually touches I1. So I drew a little dotted line there, and that is actually where we would say, well, with that money, with that budget and that exchange rate, those are the quantities someone might actually buy. And that kind of defines the idea of demand. It's an equilibrium of the choices of budget and satisfaction. And when those combine together, you end up with what we call in difference curves and budget line equilibrium. And that is where we talk about somebody would buy a product. All right, well, that's a little bit of a summary of notes for you, like kind of like in a classroom setting of what demand is all about. And again, that satisfaction, looking at that through the indifference curve concept, and then also connecting that with budget lines. Make sure you take a look at the content of the week. There are additional items here, but hopefully these notes get you started off.